Good morning, all.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Yes.
Shall we start, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am. No issues.
Okay. Good afternoon to each one of you present today. We are in the second day of our 4 days International Faculty Enrichment Program on new perspectives on enhancing English language teaching skills. Small cheer and great welcome makes every event merry. Now I request Ms. R. Vaishnavi, Assistant Professor, to welcome the gathering.
Good afternoon, everyone. It gives me a tremendous contentment to be presenting the welcome speech on this beautiful occasion. On this occasion, I would like to offer my warm welcome to our esteemed Secretary, Director, Principal, Vice Principal, and Dean of Arts. Welcome you all dignitaries. I would like to offer my genial welcome to our chief guest, Mr. Manu Mangattu, poet, published author, Hyderabad. Welcome you, sir. I would like to extend my hearty welcome to Head of the Department, Dr. S.S. Saranya, my dear faculty friends. It's my pleasure to extend my cheerful welcome to all the participants. Your presence makes us happy. Thank you so much for being such a great audience and hearing me out. With this, let's begin this session. I am confident that you will find new ideas through this FEP. I wish you all a very successful faculty enrichment program. Thank you for the opportunity. Once again, welcome you all. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Leaders are not born, they are made by dedication, committed responsibility, and are motivating the team members. May I request our director, Dr. S. Srividya, to give the presidential address. Please, ma'am.
Whether I'm audible?
Yes, ma'am. You're audible, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
A pleasant good afternoon to one and all gathered here. It is my pride and privilege to present the presidential address on the 4 days International Faculty Enrichment Program on recent trend in English language and teaching skills. Language. It is said to be a very best and basic mode of communication for anybody, those who want to live in the world. As far as apart from the mother tongue, as far as English language is concerned, it is also one of the inevitable part to survive in their career as well as in the existence. And we have to cope up with the latest technologies and recent trends which we are following and which we are facing into the today's environment. So our college in this backdrop is organizing a 4 days faculty enrichment program for the on recent trends in English and teaching skills. It is a high time to have such kind of a faculty enrichment program to develop ourselves and to have a over eyesight view and as well as an overview about the recent trends which are available in the field. English is nothing but a language and it is said to be a lifeline for the survival nowadays. If we want to go out of the state, we have to know one of the common languages of the world. English becomes like that only. So nowadays, without English, we can't survive for our own career as well as our own existence, even for our existence. Not only for our career, for existence also. So in order to know the recent trends which we have to cope up with the present scenario, we need to update ourselves with the latest trends and activities. Now we are all in the we are running behind the 4 C's in our academic curriculum like content, context, then clarity, then
I'm just testing my audio and video.
hello. Whether am I audible? Whether am I?
Yes, ma'am. Audible, ma'am.
Some interruption is there.
They're asking you to on your video, ma'am, so that.
I'm standing outside, so I'm out of my work area, so I can't switch over my video. Kindly excuse me. So that is said to be the main part and pride of the English language. So I wish the English department of our college for conducting such a wonderful and lively topic, which is said to be a current requirement for the survival of English faculties. Thank you one and all for giving me this opportunity, and wish you all the best for the participants, those who are participating in this wonderful occasion. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. It is always curious of the spectators to get acquaintance with the chief guest. Now I request Dr. M. Jayachandran, Assistant Professor, organizer of this program, to introduce the chief guest. Please, sir.
Thank you, Professor Vijitra. I am happy to introduce the guest of honor today, Mr. Manu Mangattu. Hello, sir. Manu sir needs no introduction, and you all can witness his presence in all webinar and seminars conducted throughout India. He is a poet, author, MOOC content creator, and net English trainer, mentor, IA-I3 USA certified life coach and academic counselor, iFest star campaigner and publishing expert, chief editor, AJILE International Journal, and film critic. And this apart, he has authored 9 books and edited 10 books. He also has translated 8 works. As a resource person, he has delivered more than 50 lectures in various national and international webinars and seminars. And this apart, he currently offers part-time guidance to 27 research scholars from India, Iran, Australia, and Indonesia. Without further ado, I request the guest to take over the session. Thank you, sir. Welcome you.
Thank you so much, dear Jayachandran sir. It was very nice. Somebody smiling and welcoming you. It's like your smile was like giving a virtual bouquet to me. I felt really happy to see you smile. These days, people forget to smile. So it was very nice, Jayachandran sir. He's a good friend of mine. And this college itself, Srimad Andavan College, this college itself is very close to my heart. I have very fond memories of this institution, of having delivered lectures here, and I have some great friends in this institution. Yes, it is a virtual platform, but still it is a great pleasure to be back to a kind of beautiful institution where you have some extraordinary friends and some wonderful people. Now, I thank the institution, the management, the Department of English, especially my friends who have extended another welcome to me to give a lecture on your forum, on your platform with your participants and students. It's a great privilege. Thank you so much. Thank you all dear participants for being here. Tanisma, nice to see you with your video on. All the others, everybody, thank you so much for being here. Yeah, there are some kids as well attending, so that's a great honor. I have some kids attending my lectures. So, let us come to our lecture. And today, as part of this 4-day FDP, or FEP on new perspectives in teaching. I would just take that particular part of the title, new perspectives in teaching. And I know that there are very many scholars, far experienced, far knowledgeable, and far more erudite and scholarly to speak at large about the various aspects of English language teaching and learning. I would instead look at something that I feel comfortable with, literature. And I would be on this platform today, I would be looking at a topic that I don't know whether it makes a lot of sense. I will try to make sense of it by, in an hour. By 4:15 or 4:20, I might be winding up, and then we can have an interactive session as well. So the lecture is titled The Intrusive Soliloquist, Existential Dread in Literature. I have used far too many words or keywords in my title. There is intrusion, there is soliloquy and a soliloquist, there is trauma, and people might be expecting I will be talking something on trauma literature or trauma studies and memory studies, and as also existential dread, so something about existentialism, all in connection with literature. Now, with a caveat. This topic takes birth in my own personal experiences, not as a teacher, but as a friend to my students, or as a friend to people, as also my own experiences of being a self. So people in general whom I have counseled, talked to, interacted with, and from all those experiences, especially in this pandemic scenario, but school, college, teaching, curriculum related experiences that we have with students, colleagues, teachers, office people, everyone, all of them, even the non-teaching faculty and the cleaners and the clerks and the attendants, all of them. I firmly believe that I will be doing a grave injustice, mental disturbances and psychological, physical, mental trauma if I don't speak on these topics to our teachers and students. And I believe that new perspectives in teaching should also look at these psychological aspects as well, which are connected with the human mind. And teachers are expected to be, we speak about education as the all-round development of an individual. And we say that moral enrichment, personal development traits, behavioral characteristics, all these things students imbibe from their teachers, from their classroom environment. So teachers are expected to be the solace and comforting and consoling voice to our students. But the problem is, if we aren't aware of the trauma or the dread or the psychological mental problems that our students are facing, our teachers are facing, our friends, whoever we find in the campus or even outside it, if we aren't aware of these problems, how can we know what they are going through? And if we can't understand their situation, how can we help them? Yes, we all have a big heart to help, but if we don't know what is wrong with them, what is their problem, how can we help them? So with this brief caveat on what I would be discussing, let me introduce the topic to you. Traumatic events. Trauma, whatever happens which is a trauma in our life, which is traumatic to us, it's a personal experience. There are collective traumas, big events that will have impact on the lives of a huge community, but there are events that affect just one person. Ultimately it is me who is suffering, whether it is a collective trauma or an individual trauma. And when you look at any traumatic incident, event, terrible. One thing that you can be sure of is its unbearability. It is unbearable in its horror and intensity. And because it is unbearable, we don't have the systems, we don't have the faculty in ourselves to process these events, these incidents, these situations. And so they often exist as memories in our consciousness or subconsciousness or in our unconscious mind. They exist as memories that are immediately recognizable as true, or they exist as memories once or twice removed from reality. So how can we understand these traumatic experiences? These experiences are best understood. One way is to understand the facts. For example, I'm counseling a person, and then one way to understand the trauma is to, not ask the person, but collect the details about the events from external sources. What happened to this guy? What happened to this boy? Why is he behaving like this? And that is one way I can acquire facts and process what has happened in this particular person's career, life. So a process for the person who has underwent this traumatic experience, for him or her, it is a process of discovering where and why conscious understanding and memory fail. Why does our memory fail when we are looking at traumatic incidents that happened to us? Or why does our memory tell lies? Why isn't our conscious understanding perfect when we are looking at traumatic incidents? A person who has written extensively on trauma and how people look at trauma and how we understand trauma is Kathy Caruth, Cathy, Caruth, Kathy Caruth. So people like Caruth and others, literature as something that opens a window on traumatic experiences. It opens a window, but a window on traumatic experiences, because it teaches the readers to listen to what can be told only in indirect and surprising ways. Why? Because we haven't processed the event properly. I have undergone a traumatic incident. My mind is unable to process it properly and save it properly in my system. So it is a corrupt file in my system. The file is corrupt. And because this is a correct file, retrieval requires expertise. And the expert who can retrieve and retrieve the information and probably solve the problem is literature. This is what the essence of trauma and literature studies is. Literature as the salvation, literature as the vent that will help you through a cathartic process to open your traumatic experience and maybe in some strange way, in some mysterious way, get healed, in a kind of anodyne way. You are getting healed of your traumatic experiences. This is the idea with trauma, memory, and let us say our personal experiences. And when we think about the disciplines at large, trauma studies and memory studies, together this can be viewed as complementary disciplines. There is a give and take happening always between trauma and memory studies, and largely people understand trauma studies as a subdivision of memory studies. Why? Because trauma exists as a form of memory. Trauma exists within our unconscious or our system as some form of remembrance, and maybe that is why trauma is considered to be a sub-genre, sub-discipline under memory studies. And they together, memory studies and trauma studies together, represent a field that has witnessed exponential growth in popularity, in interest, in research activity, particularly since the early 1990s. And we are in the 2020s, and here we can see that a lot of PhDs have already been written on trauma, on memory, and a lot of theories are being formulated on trauma, on memory, at a time when we think that trauma is a thing of the past. Generally, as a race, we think that it is the Holocaust or the world wars which were traumatic as a race. But that we are going through a pandemic which is no less traumatic to many people, at least at a mental psychological level. And being interconnected and complementary in nature, trauma studies and memory studies give a lot and take a lot from mutually there is a give and take, and that is why I spoke about it as a sub-discipline. Now, in order to understand the problems in the mind, understand the problems of the mind, in order to understand the problems created by the mind, we need to know the mind. To understand something, we have to know it. And many of us, I think every one of us would agree that we know very little about our own minds. We don't know about others' minds. I cannot understand you. You are terrible. You are horrible. I cannot understand you. But can I understand myself? Maybe not, because the me I met yesterday is not the me I meet today, and the me I will meet tomorrow will be totally different from the me who is talking to you today. So we don't know anything about our minds. Let's be honest about it. Let's be frank about it. And then what will we do? We will have the internet. We will have science. We will take recourse to psychology. Not much help there too, because ultimately they are saying that it is just starting. We are only at the tip of the iceberg when it comes to learning the mind. We don't know anything about the mind. Not much help in psychology, science. Learning cannot offer much help either. And we know far little about our mind, others' mind. It is very curious, very interesting that mankind knows so much about what is there in Mars and Jupiter, think about what is there in his own mind. What a shame. What a shame. But that is the nature of human mind, that we cannot understand or we cannot fathom the depth and breadth and height and intensity and profundity of what the mind means. With the limited knowledge we possess, let us try to undertake a voyage. Where? To the inner recesses of our mind. Let us set sail and move to the iceberg. Let us move our Titanic to the iceberg. We know what happened to the Titanic. Now, Freud's model of the human mind also was likened to the iceberg. So we are setting sail towards that iceberg, seeing only the tip. Seeing the tip, let us try to understand the tip at least, and then maybe if we are good enough, if everything favors, if the wind favors our sail, then maybe let us try to imagine what lies beneath that tip of the iceberg as well. First part of the title, Intrusive Soliloquist. That is what I say. Soliloquist, soliloquy. You people pronounce it differently. Soliloquy. We are familiar with Hamlet. We are familiar with Macbeth. We are familiar with the term soliloquy. We say that people speak and we can hear them speak, but they are not speaking. It is the thought of the person. We have studied about the difference between soliloquy and aside. And the person who gives a soliloquy is sometimes called a soliloquist. Now, intrusive soliloquies and intrusive soliloquists. Who and what are these? I would say that we all are intrusive soliloquies and intrusive soliloquists. And the people we find about us, around us, in the campus, in the college, in the veranda, in the classroom, are all intrusive soliloquists. Why? We all hear voices within us, but natural, don't worry. We all hear voices within us, a silent conversation. You can call it a monologue that keeps on talking things to you, or maybe to someone. We don't know to whom that sound is speaking, but it is keeping on talking. Where did this sound originate? Or why is it speaking all the time? We think that this voice stops the moment we sleep. Expect that the bigger form of sleep, the more sinister form of sleep, called death, would put an end to all those inner talks, the inner voices that we hear within us. So my question is, where did this inner talk originate? Let us look at our own lives. When did I start talking to myself? Yeah, we say that when somebody talks to themselves, we say that there is something their screws have gone bad and we have to turn off the screw, right? But when did we start talking to ourselves? Let me introduce to you two pioneering child psychologists. Let us look at the child first. The Soviet psychologist Lev Vygotsky and the Swiss psychologist Jean Piaget. Piaget, Jean Piaget and Vygotsky. So in the 1920s, the time when Freud was there and the time when modernism was at its height, in the 1920s, Swiss psychologist Jean Piaget said that private speech or egocentric speech, what is it? Speaking to oneself out loud. You speak to yourself loudly. That is private speech. So Vygotsky argued that private speech is the initial form of speech. Okay. Private speech is the initial form of speech from which the normal kind of communication that we do, we can call it social speech. Social speech develops from the private speech we have when we are children. And then this private speech kind of vanishes into thin air, dies out as children grow up. And this was Piaget who said this. Now, Vygotsky, coming after Piaget in the 1930s, Vygotsky proposed instead that private speech develops from social speech. So whatever social speech is out there, we get our private speech from social speech, and then later this private speech becomes internalized as an internal monologue rather than just dying out. It doesn't die out, but what happens? It goes silent. It goes to the interior. It goes to the, it goes beneath the tip of the iceberg. And this interpretation has come to be the most widely accepted. And empirical research also supports this claim. So Vygotsky sees private speech as something that happens at a young age, as something which is a pioneer or a precursor to inner speech. So what I'm saying is, we all have voices within us. We all hear voices within us. And Vygotsky, Piaget, they were suggesting that it is connected to social speech, but it is something that comes before or after social speech. But ultimately, what we can conclude is, it is a precursor to inner speech. Initially, we speak things aloud, and then gradually this, spoken loud speech, private speech, gets settled as we grow up, as we no longer as we no longer are children, and then this will become private speech is speech spoken to oneself for communication purposes, sometimes for self-guidance, self-regulation of behavior. When you look at people with autism spectral disorders, people with autism, that if you tell them something that they cannot process, anything, you say that today the sun is not yet out, you are telling to a child suffering from autism, you are telling him, dear, today the sun is not out, it might rain. He cannot process this, and what he does is, he will speak it aloud. He will speak it aloud. Dear, the sun is not out yet, it might rain. So whatever sentence I spoke, he will just speak it out aloud, and he will walk. When you observe those people, mostly you find them walking and speaking these things and trying to internalize it. And once they understand what it is like, okay, the sun is not out, and so there is a chance that it will rain. He will be able to understand it, but he will take some time. Until then, he will speak it to himself loudly. So this is what children do, especially, better to look at children with some learning disabilities, children with, differently able children. They express these in a more overt, more, public way. So it is between the ages of 2 and 7 that children are observed to be engaging in private speech. It is neither intended for nor directed towards others, not for others. It is when children begin school that their use of private speech gradually declines. They stop speaking to themselves loudly, and what happens? Their private speech gradually goes underground, and children stop speaking aloud. Instead, they start speaking within their mind, within their, what we call inner speech happens. And now, those of you who are listening to me, who are listening to some voices within you, there was a time when all of us used to speak these things aloud. This voice was loud. Now that voice is silenced. I'm not going to speak about the what you call subaltern aspects of silencing the voice and how the society has silenced that voice and put it into the confines of your memory that you can think about later. So anyway, Vygotsky's theory is supported by neuroscience as well these days. Neural imaging, MRI images, support Vygotsky's idea that when individuals are talking to themselves, they are having an actual conversation to themselves, but they are having an actual conversation. And intriguingly, very interestingly, individuals do not express the same arrangement of neural activation with silent monologues. Monologue is distinctly different. As far as brain science knows, are distinct from inner talk. Okay, let us keep it there. Now, what is a monologue? We know what internal monologue is. We sometimes call it self-talk. It is a person's inner voice which gives a running commentary or a running verbal monologue of thoughts while the person is conscious or not sleeping. Let us call it not sleeping. And it is usually person's sense of self. This is a very important point. Remember this, our internal monologue, our self-talk, our verbal monologue that we do inside us is tied to our sense of self, existence. I exist. That is why I can produce an internal monologue. It is a constructive act of the human mind and a tool for discovering new knowledge as well as for making new decisions. We have different types of people among us, and we are all very strange specimens. So in some cases, people think of inner speech as coming from an external source. For example, people who suffer from schizophrenia, people who suffer from auditory hallucinations, they think that this inner speech that they hear within themselves is coming from an external source. So we need to understand that not everyone, we think that everyone is gifted with an internal monologue. No, not everyone has access to this internal monologue. Anyway, in literature, this loose flow of thoughts and experiences, whether it is verbal or not, we call it by giving it a sweet name. We call it the stream of consciousness. Stream of consciousness, which can, this is a technique that they use in literature, the stream of consciousness technique. And in literary criticism, we have a similar term akin to internal monologue, known as interior monologue. Interior monologue. There is a very beautiful story about the life of a widow. The title of the story is Widow. I cannot recall the name of the writer, but that is an unbelievably wonderful presentation of interior monologue as it happens in the mind of a 17-year-old widow. So you can look at that later. Interior monologue. So this is sometimes used as a synonym for stream of consciousness. However, when you look at the dictionary of literary terms, when you look at M.H. Abrams, they say that distinguish between interior monologue and stream of consciousness, both psychologically and literarily. In a psychological sense, stream of consciousness is the subject matter, whereas interior monologue is the technique for presenting that subject matter. Stream of consciousness is the content, and interior monologue is the technique we use to present that content. That is the literary understanding, and that is a psychological way of understanding these two terms, difference between these two terms. And in literature, we understand it like this. Whereas in interior monologue, it always presents a character's thoughts directly, without intervention of an authorial, or without an authorial intervention, or without the presence of a narrator, mingling them with impressions, opinions, and perceptions of the author or the narrator, without violating the norms of grammar or logic. Stream of consciousness technique is not like that. It does one or both of these things. It can have the authorial voice there, and it can violate norms of grammar, logic, because what we think doesn't always happen in full sentences. It is not always in grammar. We may, think about what you are thinking, and you understand that there are very few full sentences we are thinking. Maybe we have to think like, what you call, think like Shashi Tharoor. If you have to produce grammatically correct sentences all the time, I don't know how he thinks, just an assumption. Anyway, this is the idea with how it is in literature and literary criticism. And coming back to inner speech is, I was telling you, it is associated with a strong sense of self. Remember what René Descartes, Cartesian philosophy, what René Descartes, what he said, cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. I am means I exist. I think, therefore I exist. Inner speech is connected with a sense of self. And also, next point I want you to remember is the development of this sense of self in children is tied to the development of language. Our self emerges, or we realize that we have a self, or we realize that we exist simultaneous with our learning of language. So we learn language, and then we start thinking, we start having inner speech, and then we come to realize that we exist. Ontological things happen. Your sense of self comes to exist within your consciousness when you learn language, and when you manage to express your ideas or whatever using inner speech. And when you are a child, you speak it aloud. As you grow up, it completely goes into your mind, and it becomes inner speech. How do we think? Is it through language? Is it language that helps us think? Can we think without language? Or can't we think without language? Post-structuralism believes so. Post-structuralism tells us that there is nothing outside of language. If there is no language, you don't exist. Your existence itself depends on language. And I hope the way I explained, you can see the connection between this formation of self and your existence. So I'm not saying you don't exist in a physical sense, but to you exist only when you develop the skill of language. And inner discourse or inner speech is so prominent in human awareness of mental functioning that it may often seem to be synonymous with mind. Don't you think so, my dear friends? When we think, the voice that we are hearing, we call it the mind, don't we? Most often we call it the mind. And sometimes when we are morally inclined or when we are having choices, we might even call it a conscience, right? We might even call it a conscience. And sometimes when our eyes go up, oh, what was it? Then we think it is, this inner thought is the brain. And my heart feels, my brain thinks, and my mind does something else. So it is in between my head and my brain and my heart, or is it in my stomach? I don't know. Where is it? We don't know. But we think that this whole thought process, when it happens in the view then is that mind means what one experiences when thinking things out. Active when you are thinking. This is what we assume. Common man's assumption or understanding of mind is whatever is activated when I am thinking, that particular space or that particular phenomenon is called my mind. And that thinking things out is believed to consist only of the words we hear. Now, thinking, 99% of people think that thinking is done through words. I don't know if anybody thinks otherwise. Of course, we will have a discussion on it when we have the question and answer session. If you feel that there are other ways of thinking as well without words, you can say there are gestures, you can say there are emotions that cannot be expressed in words, but do you still think that you can think outside of words? Let's think about it. Now, self-talk or internal monologue can be divided into two. Now I am doing a little bit of a, development trainer thing. No, I don't like them. I am completely against personality development because I think that personality should not be developed. Every personality is unique in its own and it should be allowed to develop in its own way. So we need both introverts and extroverts. We need problem people. We need problemless people. We need everyone. That is what I believe. But for the sake of clarification, for clarity, let me do a little bit of personality development talk. So self-talk can be divided into two things: positive self-talk and negative self-talk. And unlike personality development trainers, I am going to talk more about negative self-talk, not positive self-talk, because we are doing literature, right? We are teachers, and what are we teachers doing? We are always finding mistakes, don't we? When we get an answer sheet, we underline all the mistakes. We don't see anything good in an answer sheet. It becomes so red in color that you can even wave it and stop it read. That red, we make our students answer sheets. So definitely we are interested in negative things. So positive self-talk and negative self-talk. I know I don't have to tell you a lot about positive self-talk. It is defined as helpful, positive self-talk. It involves noticing the reality of the situation, overriding the beliefs and biases that can lead you to negative self-talk. And there is also this thing called coping self-talk. Positive self-talk that helps us improve performance. Now, my dear friends, we all have heard what Paulo Coelho has said in The Alchemist. We all know Rhonda Byrne and what her magic is and all. And many of us believe those things. And we believe that if we believe and we positive affirmations can help, all these things we have heard. So an example of coping self-talk is, you are anxious about today's lecture because you haven't prepared well, but don't worry. I'm telling myself, this is a coping self-talk. I'm telling myself this before the lecture: Manu, you haven't prepared well for today's lecture, but don't worry, all the other speakers are also like that. So you will be fine. So you will be fine. This is a coping self-talk. I'm not solving it. I'm just consoling myself. All the rascals are like that. So you too be a rascal and do the same thing. Fine. This is the idea. Positive self-talk, coping self-talk. Now let us come to negative self-talk, unhelpful self-talk. Unhelpful. I know if there are literature people here, they would disagree with me when I call it unhelpful, because what is helpful and unhelpful often varies from person to person. Sometimes death itself is a help. For a person in great trauma, death itself can be a help. And a negative self-talk that tells him to commit suicide is sometimes helpful. We don't know. I am not a judge on any of these things, just sharing whatever I have understood. So self-talk refers to inner critical dialogue, the dialogue that happens within us, which is critical in nature. It is based on beliefs about oneself that we develop during our childhood, based on feedback from our parents, from our peers, from our teachers, everybody. And these beliefs create a lens through which we understand the present. And this is where memory can also come into the picture, where the past shapes the present and the present kind of goes back and shapes the past. You know, examples of such beliefs, negative self-talk I'm speaking about, examples of such beliefs. Every one of you will agree that you have heard these things in your ears someday. I am useless. I am worthless. I am a failure. I am unlovable. I am terrible. See, we have heard these voices, and most often that we don't understand why it happens like that. Sometimes it just happens. We hear these voices telling us that we are useless when we have done something very useful. Even after, for example, I am giving this lecture and people say that, Manu, it was a very good lecture. You did a wonderful job. And at the end of the lecture, I am having a bout of depression, and then my ears are paining with the voice telling me, Manu, you are utterly useless. You are a terrible fellow. You don't know how to speak. You don't know how to give a lecture. You are terrible, useless, complete failure. We have heard these words speaking within us. Negative self-talk has been implicated in contributing to psychological disorders, including depression and anxiety. I know that we all know a little bit about depression and anxiety because we have experienced it. Most of us. I am not going to tell you anything about that. And there is cognitive therapy aimed at improving functionality of the person to help manage things even when you are under depression and anxiety. And they will tell you how to change your negative self-talk and things like that. From my own experience as a counselor, I haven't felt that counseling can do anything worthy to a person who is hearing a lot of negative self-talk. You can tell them, think positive, think positive, think positive. But they are asking, how can I think positive, sir? Because I'm hearing these voices. I'm not doing it purposefully. I'm trying to think positive. I am telling myself that I am extremely useful. And the voice within me laughs at me. What can I do? And that laughter is so cynical, so shattering that I just want to hide myself under my bed or under my pillow. This is what happens. The trauma of the inner critic. The trauma caused by the inner critic within us. Sometimes, for some of us, it is because of a quest for perfection. For some of us, it could be because of what during our childhood, whatever we heard from our parents. It could also be because of some traumatic incidents that have nothing to do with what you have heard, you are hearing right now, but it can, can stir up the inner critic within you. So there is this conceptualization of negative or critical thoughts as an inner critic. So we speak about having a peer reviewer within yourself. And most often than not, we have an inner critic within us as well. The inner critic or critical inner voice, what they call it, is a concept which is very famous in psychology and psychotherapy, which refers to a sub-personality within our personality that judges us, but always in a negative light, that demeans us, shames us. It is a concept, for those who are interested in psychology and psychological analysis of literary texts, you can look at Freud's concept of superego as an inhibiting censor. You can also look at Jung, Carl Gustav Jung, and his concept of the anima and the animus, the male and the female, the anima and the animus, the inner critic. This is the idea of the negative inner critic attacking you and telling you that you are bad, wrong, inadequate, worthless, useless, guilty, foolish, silly, and so on. Jung and his followers, they warn us that every personification of the unconscious, the anima, the animus, and the self has both a light and a dark aspect. Just as there is positive self-talk and negative self-talk, our anima, animus, has both a light and a dark aspect. The anima and the animus can be considered paradoxical or contradictory in nature. They can bring life-giving development and creativeness to the personality, or they can cause complete fear, petrifaction. Is it petrifaction? Petrification, I guess. Petrification. You know, you are petrified. You stand like a stone out of fear, and it can even lead to death. Such a severe inner criticism is observable in what we call narcissism. These are all related concepts. I'm just taking you through all these things. The critical inner voice is a well-integrated pattern of destructive thoughts towards oneself and towards others. And these nagging, troubling, irritating thoughts and feelings and voices that make up our internalized dialogue are at the root of much of the self-destructive and maladaptive behavior that people exhibit. The critical voice, it is an internal enemy. It is like an enemy that we are fostering within ourselves that can affect every aspect of our lives, including our self-esteem, including our confidence, including our relationships, personal, intimate relationships, our performance, our accomplishments at school and college. These negative thoughts affect us so radically by undermining our positive beliefs about ourselves and others, and it fosters self-criticism, inwardness, distrust, self-denial, addiction, even a retreat from goal-oriented activities to your pupa, to your inner, comfort zone, which is not at all comfortable. Some common voices you hear, you are stupid, you are not attractive, you are not like other people. So, there are voices that we hear career related. These voices are very smart. They are career related as well. Sometimes it will tell you it's how hard you work. See, you are doing Jayachandran, Dr. Jayachandran, you are the head of the department. You are working so hard for organizing this conference, but people are only worried about the feedback. People are already asking you about the certificates. Nobody is seeing the hard work that you are doing. Nobody is appreciating you, inner self-talk. Some other voice tells you, you are under too much pressure. You have to give the vote of thanks. You are under too much pressure. You can't handle this stress. Faint. Better faint, because you can't handle this pressure. Now this lecture will end in half an hour, and then you will have to give the vote of thanks, or you have to sing the national anthem. You are under a lot of pressure. Better faint so that somebody else will do this. You can't handle this pressure. This voice is so sinister that it will compel you into believing it. Experience voices about their relationship, like, we know what all these things are. She doesn't care for me. He doesn't think about me. He doesn't worry about what I am doing. It is better that you stay on your own. You want your private space, stay on your own. He doesn't want to know about my problems. He doesn't see what all work I am doing. An assuring, camouflaged as a kind voice comes a negative voice. This is like this. Dear, don't be vulnerable. You will get hurt. You will get hurt. So it is like a saving grace. To not get hurt, develop develop a shell around you that is completely detached with everything else, and you become a stone, petrified. You become a stone literally, like Ahalya. Rama put his feet on the stone and she became Ahalya. But Ahalya, until Lord Rama put that feet, she was a stone. She was petrified. You will get hurt. But you know, that humility to let somebody's foot on your head, that is the time when you will, heal yourself. I don't know. Many people think that if they stop listening to this critical inner voice, they are losing touch with their conscience. People think like that. See, if I don't listen to that voice is negative, but it must be true. I'm very bad. No, sir, is it? I'm very bad. I'm not capable. No, sir, do you really think I can do this? Sir, do you really think I should publish my poem? No, sir, it is really bad. No, you are just consoling me. No. So it's like a conscience. And I think that if I don't listen to this voice, I might be shamed in public. What will happen? I will publish my poem and everybody will be laughing at me. Aye, what is this? Aye, who will publish such silly poems? So fear of public shame. Okay, better not to publish. However, the critical inner voice, the difference between this critical inner voice and conscience is that it is not trustworthy. It is not a trustworthy moral guide like a conscience. A conscience is a trustworthy moral guide. It is like a guardian angel. There are, what is it that they call? We have in Dr. Faustus, the good angel and the bad angel. One angel convincing him to do wrong things and one angel convincing him to do good things. So similarly, the conscience is like the good angel. And if you compare the conscience to the good angel, then your critical inner voice is the bad angel. Maybe the devil with horns and tail, all those things. The critical inner voice is degrading. It will always remind you to be guilty. It doesn't free you from guilt. It will make you guilty and often leads us to make unhealthy decisions. These negative voices tend to increase our feelings of self-hatred without motivating to change undesirable qualities or anything. And that is why this bad angel, evil angel that is behind our ears can be very traumatic. But there are other things as well. The critical inner voice, when you look at from a linguistic point of view, linguistically, when you look at it, the critical inner voice can be understood as the language of the defensive process. You are trying to shield yourself from some problem. So this language used by this critical inner voice is a shielding mechanism. It's a defensive mechanism that is helping you survive. It represents a split within the individual between forces that, you think that it is life affirming and life destroying, but sometimes it is life preserving. Preserving. For the time being, it may not be very good, not a very good option, but at least you will be alive. That is the advantage that this voice offers. So the question is, yourself or are you against yourself? All of us have this, onion within us. I hope you are familiar with the movie Onion. All of us have that onion, divided multiple personality within us. One that takes us to crime and violence, and one that wants peace and devotion and worshipfulness. And maybe there is a Remo or a Romeo within us too, who is very romantic and very sweet and, love all the fun. So we are divided within us. On the one hand, we have self-regard. We have traits and beliefs and behaviors we are comfortable with. And on the other hand, we have this critical inner voice turned against ourselves. This warns us about other people, promoting angry and cynical attitude towards others and creating a negative and a pessimistic, cynical picture of the world. You know what Virginia Woolf did, right? Virginia Woolf considered all books as surrounded by a circle of invisible sensors. All books are surrounded by a circle of invisible sensors who admonishes, don't do that. She named one major figure, the angel in the house, a female voice frequently telling her to be less hostile to men. Why, Virginia? Why are you so angry towards your husband? Why are you so angry towards men? Don't do that. Men are good. The angel in the house. Then there is the spirit of the age, another figure that Virginia Woolf identified, the spirit of the age, an elderly masculine voice, sitting like a customs officer, checking her writing for contraband. It is. And finally, my dear friends, what are these intrusive thoughts? An intrusive thought, welcome involuntary thought, image, or unpleasant notion that can become an obsession, upsetting you, distressing you, and there will come a time that this thought is too terrible that you don't want to live any longer. And there is this wonderful story written by Guy de Maupassant, The Terror, where the protagonist of the story is afraid of his own thoughts. He's afraid of nothing. He's not afraid of ghosts. He's not afraid of people. He is not afraid of dead people, living people, nothing. He's afraid of his own thoughts. His own thoughts. And this can be a big disorder. We can call it psychosis, or then it can become neurosis or whatever. I mean, neurosis and then psychosis, anxiety disorders, eating disorders. Intrusive thoughts, urges, and images are, they are usually of three types. First and foremost, these intrusive thoughts can be sexual in nature. All sorts of sexual violence, sexual perversion come as the first version of intrusive thought. Secondly, it can be aggressive behavior. Like, it doesn't make sense also. You want to assault an old woman walking through the street. It doesn't make any sense, but you just want to assault her. I have greatest of regards for elderly people, but one fine morning I get out and I see an old woman walking and I want to smash her. And sometimes blasphemy. Third type of intrusive thought is blasphemy. So you want to, desecrate whatever is consecrated. You want to say bad things about God, about religion. Otherwise, you are a very pious person. Very pious person who has who's always praying and thankful to God and hoping that God will bless and everything. But one fine morning, he finds himself blasphemous. All these things happen. And studies reveal that almost everyone, there are studies, convincing studies that reveal that everyone has had thoughts of sexual violence, sexual punishment, unnatural sexual behavior, painful sexual practices, blasphemous, obscene images, thoughts of harming children, thoughts of harming elderly people, someone close to them, thoughts of violence against animals, and impulsive or abusive outbursts or utterances. All the bad words, using all the bad words. Such thoughts are universal among humans and have almost certainly always been a part of the human condition. Yes, we may have these thoughts sometimes, but we can banish them too. This is the fact. This is what we need to understand. This can be banished too. But for people who are sick, for people who are ill, mentally ill, psychologically ill, the problem with them is they are unable to banish these thoughts. It is not wrong to have intrusive thoughts. It is always good to understand that it is human to have intrusive thoughts and banish them. Fine, you accept it and banish them. But if you are having some problem, then what happens is you cannot banish these thoughts. And let me tell you, my dear friends, this is a problem that most of our students face today. From my experience with talking to students, and maybe it is because of staying at home for a long time because of lockdown or what, I don't know, but they are suffering from intrusive thoughts they cannot banish, and you see some sort of criminal behavior being fostered in the minds of people, probably because of this, because they are not violent people, and suppression of intrusive thoughts can make it more intense and persistent. So suppression is not the solution either. And but again, it is important for us to realize that people having such thoughts aren't necessarily criminals. Look at the history of violent crime. It is dominated by those who feel no guilt or remorse. The problem with people having intrusive thoughts is that they are feeling excessive guilt, excessive remorse. So the very fact that someone is tormented by intrusive thoughts and has never acted on them before is an excellent proof that they will not act upon these thoughts. People who are not troubled or shamed by such thoughts are going to be problem people. And these are things that we need to communicate with our students. We need to tell them. Recently in Kerala, a boy cut the throat of a girl in the campus. Now, what sort of thing is that? And people are looking for other reasons, whether he's a drug abuse, or cases of drug abuse, or this or that. But then people are, I don't know why court will not give exemption to a person who is having a psychological problem like an obsessive compulsive disorder. And certain things cannot even be proved, but certain behaviors happen because of certain things that are going on in your mind that haven't yet been found out. And maybe 10 years later, we will find that people find out that people who lived in the 2020s and 21s suffered not only from coronavirus, but from a mental virus that affected them when they were in quarantine. For example, we speak about post-traumatic stress and anxiety and a lot of things that happen to us. But there is something called existential angst or existential dread as well. And since our time is short and topic is long, I will tell you a simple example from what happened the other day. On this Monday, 4th of October 2021, there was at night an international problem, a global problem. What happened? Facebook, WhatsApp, and Instagram had an outage. They call it social media outage. Now, let me introduce a term with you: digital anomie, ANOMIE. It is a term introduced by the sociologist Emil Durkheim. And he discovered through this research that anomie occurs through and following periods of drastic social, economic, or political changes. And see, we are in such a change, and I saw something like a digital anomie happening on that particular day. Not with anyone else. I am not a doctor sitting here and treating others. It first happened with me. My WhatsApp messages, I was trying to browse my Facebook account, not opening, not working. Then I thought maybe Facebook is having a problem, leave it. I will send a message on WhatsApp, and even the text message is not sending, not tick. Oh, what is happening? I thought the network has gone bad. I cannot do anything. Then I check Instagram, it is not working as well. So I decided that my night is finished. I am doomed to perdition, and I went to sleep. And my parents have told me that, Manu, wherever you are, whatever you do, no problem, but before you go to sleep, you must call us. I didn't call them because I knew, of course, there is no network, complete problem. Even a WhatsApp message is not sending. And I'm like in a complete existential angst, in a complete trouble. And meanwhile, by about 10:30, my father gave me a call. And oh my God, network is back. The call has come. I immediately picked up the call and told him, Papa, I didn't come back because there is no network here. KM Raja, your audio is on. Please mute it. If you can. Thank you. Okay, so I told my father that no, it was because of network. And my father, who doesn't know how to send money on Google Pay and who doesn't know how to turn on his Wi-Fi, tell me quite nonchalantly that Manu, on TV it is showing all over the world there is a problem. Instagram, Facebook are all down. That is why there is no problem with your phone. You should have called. And suddenly I was awakened to the digital enemy that I was going through. What is enemy? Enemy is a social condition in which there is a disintegration or disappearance of the norms and values that were previously common to the society. You can extend the metaphor further, much further later on. You can do that. Emile Durkheim, the concept of enemy, ANOMIE. The concept thought of as, it is generally understood as normlessness. So it is accompanied by a feeling of disconnection. People who live during periods of enemy typically feel disconnected from their society. Look at it. Disconnected from our society. And we think that if WhatsApp is not there, I am disconnected. I didn't even have the common sense to check whether my mobile network is working. I could have given my parents a simple call. I didn't do that. I was waiting for my WhatsApp to be back because who knows everything about Google Pay and who thinks so lowly of his father for not knowing Google Pay. When a rude shock, my father who watches TV every day, who watches TV news every day. And he told me, I know there is a problem. This is what it is. And if you would bear with me, I will show you a screenshot of one of my friends who sent me a message in panic on email saying that something is wrong with my WhatsApp. I cannot contact you. So please contact me on email. And then because I got this knowledge from my father, I told her very reassuringly, don't worry, it is a global problem. It is not your problem. And her reply was like this. I was panic stricken. I was panic stricken. Literally, I tell you this happened. And many of you would agree with me that you were panic stricken when suddenly WhatsApp was not working. And people who live during periods of enemy feel undisconnected and disconnected from their society because they no longer see the norms and values that they hold dear reflected in society itself. This is what social media outage taught us. It is an outrage, but it is an outage as well. And the next day when WhatsApp was back, we all felt like life was back to normal. In this abnormal world, where we are thinking about the new normal and the next normal and the pre-normal, all those things, we suddenly felt that life was back to normal when Facebook's services resumed. I will wind up this lecture by pointing out just 4 coping mechanisms that we can use against this indifference, against the existential angst and the absurdity of existence and the inner thoughts that conquer us. First one, dropping pins. Drop pins. We know how to drop pins on Google Map. Similarly, drop pins, points within your mind, like the liquid fray of consciousness. What you have to do is, it can be God, it can be the state, it can be morality, it can be fate, it can be the laws of life, it can be expectations for future. Drop those pins, and these pins can help you get out of this absurdity and indifference and existential angst that envelop and enshroud your existence. Mechanism that I would suggest is quarantining. Not quarantining. Oh, we are fed up with quarantining, dear sir. Don't say quarantining. I am saying quarantining in another way. a full arbitrary dismissal from consciousness of everything that is disturbing and destructive. Thoughts, banish all destructive and disturbing thoughts from your consciousness. Quarantine your mind. Quarantine your mind. Maintain distancing, not social distancing. Maintain some sort of distancing between your mind and these bad thoughts. One solution that people say, not my finding, people say, I have just put it in a different words, that's all. And then another thing that can be done is to divert our thoughts. Diversion. It occurs when one limits attention to whatever is binding us, and focusing attention on the impressions, sensory impressions, rather than focusing on what we hear inside. That is, for a moment, focus on what is outside, what is going on outside. We have our ears, we have our eyes, we have our nose, we have 5 sensory organs, and we have so many other organs that can communicate as well. Use all those organs instead of focusing always on the brain. This is diversion. Disrupt the thought process, disrupt and focus your energy on a task or idea that can take you away from whatever you do. This is a very simple idea. We all do that. We all do that. And finally, from a literary perspective, I would suggest sublimation. Sublimation is the refocusing of energy away from negative outlets towards positive ones. In other words, you are channelizing. It is an energy, whether it is negative or positive, it is an energy. Channelize that energy in positive ways, and that is known as sublimation. Individuals distance themselves and look at their existence from an aesthetic point of view. This is sublimation. Look at your, get out of yourself, move out of yourself and see yourself from an aesthetic angle. See how beautiful your existence is. See how blessed you are. How many people have died? You are still alive to have these problems. See, you have problems that nobody have. Very good. Very good. You have something that nobody has. You always wanted to have something that nobody has. No. As a child, you always asked God, give me something that nobody has in this world. Now God has given you a lot of problems that nobody has. Take it with both hands. Enjoy it. Try to enjoy it. So this is ultimately what we can do. Writers, poets, painters, they all sublimated all the negatives that came to them. I would want all of us to believe that an existential crisis is actually a good thing. A burden of gifted individuals and deep thinkers that sets them apart from those who don't think deeply about life. Now, all of us are great thinkers because we all have existential problems. We all have such questions. And I'm winding it up with a quotation from James Webb. Existential depression in gifted individuals. He says this. I'm quoting, I'm reading it for you. Why should such existential concerns occur disproportionately among gifted persons? Why should it occur disproportionately among gifted persons? Partially, it is because substantial thought and substantial, something that has substance, substantial thought and reflection, thinking and reflecting on what you are thinking, must occur to even consider such notions rather than simply focusing on superficial day-to-day aspects of life. So if you are troubled by your mind, enjoy in the volitions and thoughts and negative or positive, whatever it is. Enjoy the subversion, enjoy the negativity and the positivity, because as Dr. Johnson said, life is a web of joys and sorrows. It will not come as a single packet. It always comes as in a pair. Joys and sorrows, web of joys and sorrows. That is what our life is. And That is it, all that I have got to say. So my dear friends, let us open our ears and eyes to our students, our friends who are facing these problems, existential problems, mental problems, physical problems, problems that they cannot express mostly because there is no vent. And we can help them, at least give a lend them an ear, a listening ear. Even if we don't have solutions, let them express. And art is expression through suppression. Let us help them relieve their whatever is suppressed within them through this artistic form called speaking. That is it. Thank you so much, and thank you so much for your patient listening.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Audience,
thank
would
so
you
much.
like to have any questions? Okay, sir. Thank you, sir, for giving us a comprehensive view of what is happening around recently. And your speech also has introduced us to anatomy. Those coping mechanics you have suggested will definitely help all our participants to wade through these challenges in the forthcoming years, sir. Thank you very much. And gratitude is a sign of noble souls. Now I request Mrs. R. Ilakia, Assistant Professor, Department of English, to propose vote of thanks.
A warm and cherished evening to all. I deem it a great pleasure and honor to propose vote of thanks. I start by giving glory to the Almighty God for making today's session a resounding success. I express my deep sense of gratitude to our renowned and respected chairman, secretary, and advisor for their constant support. I take this occurrence to express my gratefulness to Director Dr. S. Vidya for her valuable presence. I accord my generous thanks to express my gratefulness to Principal Dr. J. Radhika, Vice Principal Dr. M. Pichaimani, and the Dean of Arts, Dr. S. Lakshmi, for their strategic support and guidance, etc. At the outset, I must remark a proficient sense of gratefulness to the chief guest, Mr. Manu Mangattu, for gracing his presence and showed the rope of positive ideas of drama, soliloquy, monologue, psychological senses, self-talk, waking inner critic as a personality development skills. I extend my thanks to the head of the department, Dr. S.S. Saranya, and faculty members of the Department of English who have been fortunate enough to be backed up by a team of motivators. Learning is a constant process of discovery. It's by learning new things in life happen that makes us grow. My hearty thanks and appreciation goes to all the participants who has been taken part with great enthusiasm. I thank the technical team for their unflinching support and coordination. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ilakia.
I have shared my email and WhatsApp number on the chat box. If anybody is questions, you can post it to me on email or WhatsApp as well. I have posted it in the chat box.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. So really delighted to meet you all, and thank you for being so patient for almost 1 hour, 1 hour 15 minutes. And we should all meet tomorrow for another accelerating. I don't say mine was accelerating, but an accelerating session. Couple more sessions coming up. A wonderful workshop. FEP is going on. So tomorrow, hopefully. Thank you so much.
Sure, sir.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir. Bye, sir. Thank you, sir.